The Wyoming wind had teeth that January morning in 1885, and Lily Rose figured she had about an hour before the blizzard killed her. The stagecoach lay on its side 3 miles back, the driver and guard both dead from when the horses had spooked at a mountain lion's scream, sending the whole rig careening off the narrow mountain pass. She had crawled out through shattered wood and twisted metal, her carpetbag clutched in trembling fingers, and started walking because staying meant freezing beside corpses. The snow fell so thick she could barely see her own hands, and each gust of wind felt like knives slicing through her wool coat. Her feet had gone numb 20 minutes ago, and she knew that was the beginning of the end. She stumbled over something buried in the snow and went down hard, tasting blood where her lips split against the frozen ground. Getting back up took everything she had. Her limbs felt heavy as lead, and a treacherous voice in her mind whispered that lying down would be so much easier, so much warmer. She forced herself upright and kept moving, though she had no idea which direction she faced anymore. The world had become nothing but white and wind and cold. Then through the howling storm she saw it, a darker shape in the whiteness, solid and square. A building. Hope surged through her frozen body, giving her strength she did not know she possessed. She lurched toward it, praying it was not some cruel hallucination born of desperation. Her boots caught in a drift and she fell again, but this time she crawled, dragging herself forward through snow that burned her hands even through her gloves. The shape resolved into a cabin. Sturdy logs chinked against the weather. She pulled herself up the 2 steps to the porch and pounded on the door with fists she could no longer feel. "Please," she tried to call out, but her voice emerged as barely a whisper, stolen by the wind. She hit the door again, harder, using the last of her strength. The world tilted sideways and she realized she was falling, but she never felt herself hit the ground. Warmth was the first thing she registered, blessed warmth seeping into her frozen body. Then pain, terrible burning pain in her hands and feet as feeling returned. She tried to cry out, but her throat was too dry. A calloused hand slipped behind her head, lifting it gently, and something warm pressed against her lips. "Easy now," a man's voice said, low and rough but kind. "Just small sips. You have been out in that cold too long to take too much at once." Lily's eyes fluttered open. The face above her was weathered and strong, with a dark beard and eyes the color of rich coffee. He looked to be in his late 20s, maybe 30 at most, with the kind of face that had seen hard weather and harder times, but had not lost its essential decency. A cowboy, she realized, taking in the worn flannel shirt and the bandana knotted at his throat. "Where am I?" she managed to whisper. "My cabin, about 15 miles outside Green River, Wyoming." He helped her take another sip of what tasted like warm broth. "I am Thaddeus Armstrong. Found you half frozen on my porch about 2 hours ago. Thought you were dead at first." The memories came flooding back. The crash, the bodies, the desperate walk through the storm. "The stagecoach," she said. "The others, I know." His voice was gentle. "When the storm breaks, I will go look, but there is nothing to be done for them now. Right now, I need to worry about keeping you alive." She realized she was lying on a bed near a roaring fireplace, covered in what felt like every blanket the cabin possessed. Her coat and boots had been removed, but she was still wearing her dress, though someone had loosened the laces to help her breathe. Heat flooded her cheeks as she understood this man, this stranger, had undressed her at least partially. Thaddeus seemed to read her thoughts. "I only took off what would have kept you from warming up proper," he said, his own cheeks coloring slightly. "Your coat was soaked through and your boots, nothing else. I am not that kind of man." "Thank you," Lily said softly, "for saving my life. I am Lily Rose." I was traveling to Green River to take a position as a school teacher. Long way to come for a teaching job. Long way from where I was, she agreed, not wanting to elaborate on her reasons for leaving Boston. The failed engagement to a man who turned out to have 3 other fiancées scattered across New England. The scandal that had made her the subject of pitying looks and whispered gossip. Her need to start over somewhere no one knew her name. Is the storm still bad? Thaddeus nodded toward the cabin's single window, where snow pressed against the glass in a solid white wall. Worst blizzard I have seen in 5 years. We will be snowed in here for at least 3 days, maybe 4. I have supplies enough for 2, so do not worry about that. But you are not going anywhere until this passes and you heal up. 3 days. Alone in a cabin with a strange man. The impropriety of it would be scandalous, but then again, death was more scandalous still. I seem to have little choice in the matter, Lily said. Thank you again, Mr. Armstrong. Thaddeus, he corrected. If we are going to be cabin mates for a few days, might as well use given names. Can you sit up? You should eat something more substantial if your stomach can take it. With his help, Lily managed to prop herself against the headboard. Her hands and feet still ached fiercely, but the dangerous numbness was gone. Thaddeus ladled stew from a pot hanging over the fire into a wooden bowl and brought it to her, along with a hunk of dark bread. Made it yesterday, so it is still good, he said. Rabbit and vegetables. Nothing fancy, but it will warm you through. Lily took the bowl with trembling hands. The stew tasted like the finest meal she had ever eaten, rich and savory and hot. She ate slowly, aware of Thaddeus watching her with concern, ready to catch the bowl if her grip failed. When she finished, exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. Sleep, Thaddeus said, taking the empty bowl. Your body needs to heal. I will be right here if you need anything. Lily wanted to protest, to say she should not take his bed while he sat in a chair, but her eyes were already closing. She sank back into the pillows and let sleep claim her. When she woke again, pale light filtered through the window. The storm still raged outside, but the cabin was warm and safe. Thaddeus sat in a chair near the fireplace, mending a saddle strap by the light of an oil lamp. He looked up when he heard her stirring. How do you feel? He asked. Better, Lily said, surprised to find it true. Her hands and feet still hurt, but it was a healing hurt now, not the burning agony of before. What time is it? Near evening. You have been sleeping most of the day. That is good. Best thing for you. Lily pushed herself upright more successfully this time. Her dress was hopelessly wrinkled, and she must look like something the cat dragged in, but she felt more like herself. I should not be taking your bed. You must be exhausted. I have slept in worse places than a chair, Thaddeus said with a slight smile. Spent 2 years following cattle drives up from Texas. Slept on bare ground most of that time. This is luxury in comparison. Still, it does not seem right. What does not seem right is a lady freezing to death because I was too proud to let her use my bed. He set aside the saddle strap and stood, stretching his back with an audible crack. Besides, I have been dozing on and off. I am fine, truly. Lily swung her legs over the side of the bed, testing her weight on her feet. They held, though they protested. I need to, she stopped, embarrassed. Outhouse is buried under 4 feet of snow, Thaddeus said matter-of-factly. I have a chamber pot under the bed. I will step outside for a moment to give you privacy. Outside, in that storm, just onto the porch. I need to check that the snow is not blocking the door anyway, or we will be digging ourselves out come morning. He pulled on his heavy coat and opened the door. A blast of frigid air and snow swirled in before he stepped out and pulled it shut behind him. Lily took care of necessities quickly, mortified by the situation but pragmatic enough to accept it. When Thaddeus knocked a few minutes later, she called for him to enter. He came in stamping snow from his boots, his beard white with ice. "Still coming down hard," he said. "But I have seen worse. We will be fine." Over the next few hours, Lily learned more about her rescuer. Thaddeus Armstrong was 28 years old, had been working as a cowboy since he was 15, and had saved enough money to buy this piece of land and build this cabin 2 years ago. He ran a small herd of cattle, hired himself out for ranch work when needed, and trapped during the winter to supplement his income. "Why here?" Lily asked as they ate a simple supper of fried salt pork, beans, and more of that dark bread. "Why Wyoming?" "Because it is beautiful," Thaddeus said simply. "Because the mountains make me feel small in a good way. Because I got tired of living out of a bedroll and wanted a place to call my own." He looked around the cabin, which was indeed simple but well built and tidy. "It is not much, but it is mine. Only thing I have ever owned except my horse and saddle." "It is a good cabin," Lily said. "Strong, you built it yourself, most of it, had help raising the walls, but I did the rest." There was quiet pride in his voice. "It keeps the weather out and the warmth in. That is all a man needs." "What about a woman?" Lily asked, then immediately regretted the forward question. "I am sorry, that was inappropriate. It is a fair question." Thaddeus stared into his coffee cup. "I have not had much luck in that department. Women around here want men with more to offer than a one-room cabin and a few head of cattle. And the women I knew before, well, they wanted men who would stay put and work in town, not spend half their time in the saddle." "The right woman would not care about those things," Lily said softly. "Maybe. Or maybe the right woman is smart enough to want security and a proper home." He looked up at her, and something in his dark eyes made her breath catch. "What about you? Pretty woman like you, educated enough to be a teacher, there must be a man back east wondering where you are." "No," Lily said firmly. "No one wondering. No one who has the right to wonder anyway." Thaddeus studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. We all have things we left behind." That night, Lily insisted Thaddeus at least use some of the blankets to make a proper pallet on the floor, but he refused to take any from the bed. "You are still recovering," he said. "You need the warmth more than I do." But in the middle of the night, Lily woke to hear his teeth chattering. The fire had burned down to coals and the temperature in the cabin had dropped significantly. She could see his shape huddled on the floor, trying to stay quiet so as not to wake her. "Thaddeus," she whispered. He went still. "I am fine. Go back to sleep. You are freezing. This is ridiculous." She made a decision that propriety would condemn but common sense demanded. "Get in the bed." "What? No, I cannot. You can and you will. You saved my life. I will not let you freeze to death out of misplaced chivalry. The bed is big enough for two if we stay on our own sides. We are both adults. We can manage one night without scandal. Lily, now Thaddeus, before we both freeze." She heard him sigh, then the sound of him gathering his blankets. The bed dipped as he climbed in, staying carefully on the far edge. Lily did the same, maintaining a careful distance between them. But even separated by a foot of space, she could feel the warmth of his presence, hear his breathing slow as he finally began to relax. "Thank you," he murmured. "You are welcome." They lay in silence for a while, listening to the wind howl outside. Then Thaddeus spoke again, his voice soft in the darkness. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why did you really come west? It was not just for a teaching job." Lily considered lying, but something about the darkness and the intimacy of the moment made her want to tell the truth. "I was engaged. To a banker's son named Charles. Everyone said it was a wonderful match. He was handsome and charming and said all the right things." She paused, the memory still painful. "Turns out he said all the right things to 3 other women in 3 other cities. He had been collecting fiancées like some men collect stamps." When it all came out, society treated it as though we were all foolish girls who had been taken in, but the whispers were cruel. I could not stay there, could not bear being pitied and gossiped about. So when I saw the advertisement for a teacher in Green River, I applied. New start, new place, new life. His loss, Thaddeus said quietly. Man would have to be 10 kinds of fool to do that to you. You do not even know me. I know you have courage. Most people would have given up in that storm, let themselves freeze. You kept going, you fought. That tells me what I need to know. Warmth that had nothing to do with the blanket spread through Lily's chest. Thank you, just the truth. He shifted slightly, and she heard him yawn. Good night, Lily rose. Good night, Thaddeus Armstrong. The next morning brought more snow and continued wind, but the worst fury of the storm seemed to have passed. Lily woke to find herself curled against a warm, solid presence, and realized with a start that sometime during the night, she and Thaddeus had drifted toward the center of the bed. Her head rested on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. She should have been scandalized, should have pulled away immediately. Instead, she lay still, savoring the feeling of safety and comfort. Thaddeus stirred and his eyes opened. For a moment they looked at each other, frozen. Then they both pulled back, embarrassed. I am sorry, Thaddeus said. I did not mean it is cold, Lily said quickly. We were just seeking warmth. It does not mean anything. Right, of course. But something in his eyes said he did not quite believe that any more than she did. They spent that day talking. Lily told him about growing up in Boston, her love of books, her desire to make a difference by teaching children. Thaddeus spoke of his childhood in Missouri, his father dying when he was young, his mother working herself to exhaustion to keep him fed. How he had left at 15 to make his own way, not wanting to be a burden. The cattle drives, the hard men and harder weather, the slow accumulation of money and experience that had brought him here. You ever get lonely? Lily asked as they sat by the fire that evening, drinking coffee and watching the flames dance. Sometimes, Thaddeus admitted. Winter is the worst. Days go by without seeing another soul. I talk to my horse more than is probably healthy. He gave a self-deprecating smile. But then spring comes, and I get hired on for roundup or drive cattle to market, and I am around people again. It balances out. I think I would like the solitude sometimes, Lily said. In Boston, you are never alone, never have a moment of quiet. Someone is always watching, always judging. The silence here would be a relief. It can be both a relief and a burden, Thaddeus said. But I think you would do well here. You have the strength for it. That night, they shared the bed again without discussion, and again woke tangled together. This time, they did not pull away quite so quickly. By the third day, the storm had blown itself out, leaving a world transformed by snow. Thaddeus dug a path to the barn where his horse waited, patient and unharmed. He also dug out the outhouse, to Lily's profound relief. She stood on the porch, breathing in the sharp, clean air, marveling at the beauty of the snow-covered landscape. I should take you into town tomorrow, Thaddeus said, coming to stand beside her. The school will be expecting you, and people will worry if the stage never arrived. Yes, Lily said, but her voice lacked conviction. I suppose you should. He turned to look at her. Do you want to go? It was a simple question with a complicated answer. Lily thought about the cabin, warm and safe. About the easy companionship she had found with this man who had saved her life. About waking up in his arms and not wanting to move. I do not know, she said honestly. Is that foolish? We have known each other only 3 days. I have known men for years and never understood them as well as I have come to understand you, Thaddeus said. Time is not always what matters. What does matter? He was quiet for a long moment. When I found you on my porch, half dead from the cold, Something in me recognized something in you. Like calls to like, my mother used to say. I felt it then and I feel it now. You fit here, Lily. You fit in this place, and if I am being honest, you fit with me." Lily's heart pounded in her chest. "Thaddeus, I am not asking you to marry me," he said quickly. "I know that would be crazy, too fast, but I am asking if you might want to stay a while longer. Get to know me, let me know you better, see if what I feel, what I think you might feel too, is real. I have a position waiting for me in town. You do. And if that is what you want, I will take you there tomorrow and wish you well, but if what you want is here." He gestured at the cabin at the mountains beyond. "Then maybe we can find a way to make that work too." Lily looked at him, this cowboy who had saved her life, who had treated her with respect and kindness, who made her feel safe in a way Charles never had. She thought about the life waiting for her in Green River, teaching other people's children, living in a boarding house, respectable and alone. Then she thought about waking up warm and safe in Thaddeus's arms, about coffee by the fire and quiet conversations, about belonging somewhere with someone. "I would like to stay," she said softly, "if you are sure." The smile that spread across Thaddeus's face was like the sun coming out. "I am sure. I have never been more sure of anything." He took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers, and led her back inside. They stood by the fire, still holding hands, and Lily felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like coming home. "We should be practical about this," she said, even as she moved closer to him. "People will talk. A single woman living with a single man, then marry me," Thaddeus said. "Not today, not tomorrow, but soon, when you are ready." "I meant what I said about not rushing you, but Lily, I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. I think I started falling in love with you the moment I saw you lying in the snow, too stubborn to die." "That is a terrible moment to fall in love with someone," Lily said, but she was smiling, her eyes bright with tears. "Maybe, but it is the truth." He lifted his free hand to cup her cheek. "You do not have to answer now, take the time you need, but know that I am yours if you will have me." Lily leaned into his touch, her heart full to bursting. "I fell in love with you when I woke up and you were trying to save my life," she whispered. "When you called me back from the cold. Every moment since has only made me more certain. Is that a yes?" "That is a yes, but let us be sensible about the timing. A month, maybe 2, so we can be sure. So I can write to the school board and explain, so we can do this properly." "A month," Thaddeus agreed. "I can wait a month. I would wait a year if that is what you needed." He bent his head and kissed her, gentle and sweet, and Lily felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. This was where she belonged. Not in Boston with its society and rules, not even in Green River with its teaching position and respectability. Here in this cabin, with this man who had pulled her from the snow and shown her what it meant to be truly seen, truly valued. They spent the rest of that day planning. Thaddeus would take her into Green River tomorrow to explain what had happened, to send word about the stage wreck, to arrange for proper accommodations while they courted. They would do things right, give the town no reason to gossip more than necessary. But Lily would come back to the cabin often, help Thaddeus with chores, learn the rhythms of this new life she was choosing. "Can you ride a horse?" Thaddeus asked. "I have had lessons. Then I will teach you to ride properly, Western style. You will need to know how if you are going to live out here." "Live out here," Lily repeated, tasting the words. "In this cabin, for now. But I have been planning to build an addition come spring, add another room or 2. I will work extra this summer, save more money. In a few years, maybe we can build a proper house." He looked uncertain. "I know it is not much compared to what you are used to." "It is everything," Lily interrupted. "Everything I did not know I wanted. Everything I never thought I would find." That night, Their last night before returning to the obligations of the outside world, they lay in bed together, talking until the fire burned low. Thaddeus told her about his dreams for the ranch, how he wanted to expand the herd, maybe bring in some horses to breed and train. Lily spoke of teaching, how she could perhaps start a small school at the cabin for the children of nearby ranches, who often went without education because the distance to town was too great. "You would do that?" Thaddeus asked. "Teach from here?" "Why not? It would serve a need and let me keep doing something I love, and it would be mine, not some school board dictating what I can and cannot do." "You are remarkable," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "How did I get so lucky?" "A blizzard and bad timing," Lily said with a smile. "Though I suppose for us, it was good timing after all." The next morning they set out for Green River, Lily riding behind Thaddeus on his sturdy bay gelding. The horse picked his way carefully through the deep snow, and Lily held tight to Thaddeus's waist, her face pressed against his back. The ride took most of the day, and they reached town as the sun was setting. Green River was small but bustling, with a main street lined with businesses and houses spreading out beyond. Thaddeus took them straight to the boarding house run by Mrs. Martha Hensley, a formidable woman in her 50s who took one look at Lily's bedraggled state and bustled her inside. "You poor dear," Mrs. Hensley said, shooing Thaddeus away. "Let me get you settled. Mr. Armstrong, you can come back tomorrow at a decent hour to call on Miss Rose." Thaddeus met Lily's eyes over Mrs. Hensley's head, and she saw her own reluctance reflected there. But he tipped his hat and left, and Lily let herself be led upstairs to a small but clean room. Over the next few days, the story came out. The stage wreck was discovered, the bodies recovered and buried. There was grief in town for the driver, a local man with a wife and young children. Lily attended the funeral, feeling guilty that she had survived when he had not. She explained to the school board chairman what had happened, how Mr. Armstrong had saved her life, how she had been too ill to come to town sooner. Of course," Mr. Horace Pemberton said, a portly man with a walrus mustache. "We are grateful you survived, Miss Rose. Such a tragedy." "You will begin teaching on Monday, yes?" Lily hesitated. "Actually, Mr. Pemberton, I need to discuss something with you." She explained her idea about starting a school at Thaddeus's cabin for the ranch children, how she would still be teaching but in a different capacity. Mr. Pemberton frowned, his mustache bristling. "Most irregular," he said. "The board hired you to teach here in town. I understand, and I apologize for the change in circumstances, but I truly believe I can serve the community better this way. There are at least a dozen children within riding distance of the Armstrong Ranch who receive little to no formal education. I could change that. And I suppose this has nothing to do with your personal feelings for Mr. Armstrong." Lily felt her cheeks heat, but met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Armstrong and I do have an understanding. We plan to marry in the spring, but my desire to teach those children is genuine, as is my belief that I can make a real difference." Mr. Pemberton studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Very well. The board will be disappointed, but I can see you have made up your mind. I will write to Boston and see if they can send us another teacher." "Thank you," Lily said, relieved, "and I truly am sorry for the inconvenience." She left his office feeling lighter, freer. One more obligation discharged, one more tie to her old life severed. That evening, Thaddeus came to call at the boarding house and they sat in Mrs. Hensley's parlor, properly chaperoned, holding hands and making plans. "Pemberton agreed?" Thaddeus asked. He was not happy, but yes. "I am free to do as I choose." "Then choose to come home with me," Thaddeus said. "I know we said we would wait, do things properly, but Lily, I cannot stand being apart from you. Marry me now, this week. We can have Reverend Collins do it. Keep it simple. I do not need a big wedding. I just need you." Lily looked into his dark eyes and saw her own feelings reflected there. The past weeks had shown her everything she needed to know. This man was good and kind and true. He loved her and she loved him. Why wait? "Yes," she said. "This week, as soon as it can be arranged, Mrs. Hensley, who had been pretending not to listen from her chair in the corner, clapped her hands together. "How wonderful! A wedding! Oh, we must tell everyone." And so it was arranged. On a cold Saturday morning in late January, with Mrs. Hensley and a handful of townspeople as witnesses, Lily Rose married Thaddeus Armstrong in the small church at the edge of Green River. Lily wore a simple blue dress borrowed from Mrs. Hensley's daughter, and Thaddeus wore his best shirt and a new string tie purchased especially for the occasion. Reverend Collins performed the ceremony, his voice warm and sincere as he spoke of love and commitment and the sanctity of marriage. When Thaddeus kissed her, sealing their vows, Lily felt tears slip down her cheeks. Happy tears, joyful tears, tears of relief and gratitude and overwhelming love. They had met less than a month ago, but it felt as though she had known him forever, as though everything in her life had been leading her to that blizzard, to his cabin, to this moment. They rode back to the ranch that afternoon, husband and wife, and when Lily walked into the cabin, she felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was home. This was where she belonged. Their wedding night was sweet and tender, Thaddeus careful with her, showing her the depths of his love with gentle hands and whispered words. Lily gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back, and when they lay tangled together afterwards, she felt more herself than she ever had in her life. "Happy," Thaddeus murmured against her hair. "So happy," Lily whispered back. "So incredibly happy." The winter passed in a blur of contentment. Lily learned to cook on the fireplace, to churn butter and bake bread and prepare the wild game Thaddeus brought home from his hunting trips. She learned to tend the cattle, to mend fences, to split kindling for the fire. Her hands grew calloused, her body stronger. She traded her Boston dresses for practical skirts and blouses and learned to braid her dark hair in a simple plait rather than the elaborate styles she had once favored. But she also kept teaching. She put out word through the neighboring ranches that she would be starting a school in the spring, and slowly, parents began to respond. By March, she had commitments from 8 families, representing 14 children ages 6 to 15. Thaddeus built desks and benches during the long winter evenings, fashioning them from rough wood and determination. They cleared space in the cabin for the schoolroom, pushing their bed into one corner and hanging a curtain for privacy. When the first day of school arrived in early April, Lily stood before her students, her heart full. They were a ragged bunch, these ranch children, dressed in their best but still showing the wear of hard living. But their eyes were bright and curious, and when Lily began the lesson, they listened with an attention that humbled her. Thaddeus watched from the doorway, a smile on his face, before heading out to tend the cattle. That night, when the children had all been picked up by their parents, he pulled Lily into his arms and kissed her soundly. "You were born for this," he said. "Watching you teach them, seeing how they responded to you, it was beautiful." "It was wonderful," Lily agreed. "Exhausting but wonderful." "And Thaddeus, Mrs. Winters said she would pay me $1 a month to teach her 3 children. If the others do the same, I will be making real money." "We can save it," Thaddeus said. "Put it toward building that addition or maybe even a separate schoolhouse someday." Spring turned to summer, and the ranch prospered. Thaddeus's cattle herd grew, and he sold several head at good prices in town. He hired on for roundup with a neighboring ranch, bringing home extra money that they tucked away carefully. Lily's school continued, though she gave the children a break during the busy harvest months when they were needed at home. By fall, Lily realized she was pregnant. She told Thaddeus one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "I am going to have a baby," she said simply. Thaddeus froze, then turned to her with wonder in his eyes. "A baby, truly, truly." Mrs. Hensley confirmed it when I saw her in town last week. "I should have the baby in early spring." Thaddeus let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." That winter was harder, with Lily sick most mornings and exhausted by afternoon. She kept teaching as long as she could, but by January she had to admit defeat and close the school until after the baby came. The children brought her gifts when they left, small tokens of affection that made her cry. "Darn these emotions," she said, wiping her eyes. "I cry at everything now." "You are beautiful when you cry," Thaddeus said, and meant it. The baby came on a cold March morning in 1887, delivered by Mrs. Hensley and the local midwife. It was a long, hard labor, and there were moments when Lily thought she could not go on. But Thaddeus held her hand through it all, whispering encouragement, and when the baby finally emerged with a lusty cry, the pain was forgotten in the rush of joy. "A boy," Mrs. Hensley announced, placing the squalling infant in Lily's arms. "A big, healthy boy." Lily looked down at her son, at his red face and dark hair, and felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. Thaddeus knelt beside the bed, touching the baby's tiny fist with one gentle finger, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "What should we name him?" Lily asked. "I always liked the name William," Thaddeus said. "After my father, William Armstrong." "William," Lily repeated. "Will, yes." "That is perfect." Little Will was a good baby, fussy only when hungry or needing to be changed. Thaddeus proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with his son when Lily needed to sleep, changing nappies without complaint, staring at the baby for hours as though he could not believe his luck. When Will was 3 months old, Lily reopened the school, this time with the baby in a cradle near her desk. The children were enchanted with him, and the older girls vied for the privilege of holding him during breaks. Lily taught with Will sleeping or gurgling nearby, and found that motherhood and teaching balanced each other in ways that satisfied something deep in her soul. That summer, Thaddeus began building the addition to the cabin. He worked on it in the evenings and on Sundays, slowly raising walls and installing windows. By fall, they had a proper bedroom, separate from the main living area that served as kitchen, school, and parlor. The privacy was welcome, especially with a baby who woke several times a night. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and work and love. Will grew from baby to toddler to small boy, helping his father with the animals and sitting through his mother's lessons. When he was 3, Lily found herself pregnant again, and this time the baby came easier. A daughter they named Emma, with Lily's green eyes and Thaddeus's dark hair. By 1892, the Armstrong ranch had grown significantly. Thaddeus now ran a herd of nearly 50 cattle and had added horses to his operation, breeding and training them for sale. He had hired a young man named Jack to help with the work, building him a small bunkhouse behind the main cabin. Lily's school had grown too, with nearly 20 children attending regularly. Thaddeus had built a separate schoolhouse the previous summer, a small but sturdy building that stood beside their home. They were prosperous by the standards of the territory, respected in the community. But more than that, they were happy. The love that had sparked between them during those first days in the cabin had only grown stronger with time. deepening into something solid and enduring. One evening in late summer, after the children were asleep and the chores done, Lily and Thaddeus sat on their porch watching the stars come out. His arm was around her shoulders, her head resting on his chest, and she felt utterly content. "You ever think about that blizzard?" she asked. "About how different things would be if it had not happened." "All the time," Thaddeus said. "I think about what would have happened if you had not made it to my cabin, if I had not heard you knocking. I think about you dying in the snow, and it makes me sick. But I did not die. You saved me." "You saved yourself," he corrected. "You kept going when most people would have given up. I just gave you a place to be safe. You gave me more than that. You gave me a home, a family, a life I never dreamed was possible." She lifted her head to look at him. "I love you, Thaddeus Armstrong. More now than even on the day we married." He kissed her, deep and slow, the kind of kiss that still made her toes curl after 7 years of marriage. "I love you too, Lily Armstrong. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. An owl hooted in the distance, and somewhere a coyote yipped. The air smelled of sage and approaching autumn. "I have been thinking," Thaddeus said slowly. "Will is 6 now, old enough to handle some responsibility. And Emma is 3, not a baby anymore. What would you think about having another child, if the good Lord wills it, of course?" Lily smiled against his chest. "I would think that sounds wonderful. Our family is not quite complete, is it?" "No," Thaddeus agreed. "One more would be just right." And so, the following spring, their 3rd child was born. Another boy whom they named Daniel. He had Lily's auburn hair and Thaddeus's coffee-brown eyes, and from the moment he entered the world, he was adored by his older siblings. By 1895, when Wyoming had been a state for 5 years, and the Wild West was beginning to settle into something more civilized, the Armstrong family had found their rhythm. Will was 9 and already showing signs of being a natural horseman like his father. Emma was 6 and determined to learn everything her mother could teach her. Daniel was a toddling terror of 2, getting into everything and afraid of nothing. Lily still taught, though she had taken on an assistant, a young woman named Sarah from town who helped manage the growing number of students. Thaddeus's ranch had become one of the most successful in the area, and he had purchased additional land, expanding their holdings. They had built a proper house finally, a spacious 2-story structure that replaced the original cabin, though they kept the cabin as a storage building and bunkhouse for the hired hands. One evening, as they prepared for bed in their comfortable bedroom with its real glass windows and painted walls, Thaddeus pulled Lily into his arms. "You know what today is?" he asked. Lily thought for a moment, then her eyes widened. "January 15th. 10 years since the blizzard. 10 years since I found you on my porch, half frozen and stubborn as a mule." "I was not stubborn, I was desperate. You were both." He kissed her forehead. "Best day of my life, that blizzard. Brought me everything I ever wanted and did not know I needed." "We should do something to mark the occasion," Lily said. "Something special." "What did you have in mind?" She pulled back to look at him, a mischievous smile on her face. "Well, we could lock the bedroom door and recreate our wedding night." Thaddeus's eyes darkened with desire. "Mrs. Armstrong, I do like the way you think." Later, lying sated and happy in each other's arms, they talked about the future. Will would soon be old enough to start taking on more responsibility at the ranch, learning the business from his father. Emma showed promise as a teacher, often helping her mother with the younger students. Daniel was still too young to show his inclinations, but they had time. "You ever miss Boston?" Thaddeus asked. "The fancy dresses, the society, the culture." "Not even for a moment," Lily said honestly. "This is my life, Thaddeus. You, our children, this ranch, my school. This is everything I ever wanted, even when I did not know I wanted it." "Good," he said, pulling her closer, "because I plan on keeping you here for at least another 50 years. Only 50. I was hoping for 60 at least." He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "60 it is then. 60 more years of loving you, raising our family, building our life together. Promise, promise." The years continued to roll by, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. There were hard winters and dry summers, cattle lost to disease and horses that fetched good prices. There were students who struggled and students who excelled, babies born to neighbors and elders laid to rest. Through it all, Lily and Thaddeus stood together, their love the foundation upon which everything else was built. When Will turned 18 in 1904, he announced his intention to start his own ranch on a piece of land his father had set aside for him. Thaddeus helped him build a cabin, much like the one where he and Lily had first fallen in love, and watched with pride as his son began his own journey. Will married a local girl named Catherine the following year, and by 1906, Thaddeus and Lily were grandparents to a squalling baby girl. Emma, true to her early promise, became a teacher. She took over her mother's school when Lily finally decided to retire at age 50, and proved to be every bit as dedicated and skilled as her mother. She married a rancher named Thomas in 1907, and gave Lily and Thaddeus 2 grandsons in quick succession. Daniel, the baby of the family, turned out to have a gift for working with horses that surpassed even his father's skill. He became known throughout Wyoming as a horse trainer, and people came from miles around to have him work with their animals. He married late, at 30, to a woman named Grace who shared his love of horses, and they built a life that combined ranching with Daniel's training business. By 1920, Lily and Thaddeus were in their 60s, grandparents many times over, with great-grandchildren beginning to arrive. The wild west of their youth had vanished, replaced by automobiles and telephones, and a world that bore little resemblance to the one they had known. But their love had not changed, had not diminished with time. One summer evening, they sat on the porch of their home, watching the sun set behind the mountains they had loved for so long. Thaddeus's hair was white now, his face deeply lined, but his eyes were still the same warm brown that had captured Lily's heart all those years ago. Lily's auburn hair had faded to silver, and her hands were gnarled with arthritis, but she was still beautiful to him. "You remember the blizzard?" Lily asked, as she had asked so many times over the years. "Every detail," Thaddeus said. "The way you looked lying in the snow, so pale and still. How I thought you were dead at first. The relief when I got you inside and found you were still breathing." "I remember waking up and seeing your face," Lily said. "Thinking you looked like safety made flesh. I fell in love with you in that moment, though I did not realize it yet." 35 years, Thaddeus mused. 35 years since that blizzard brought us together. Seems like both forever and just yesterday. "The best 35 years of my life," Lily said. "Every single one of them." He took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. "Mine too, and you know what? I would do it all again in a heartbeat. The struggles, the hard times, the losses. All of it, just to have you by my side. I love you, Thaddeus Armstrong. I love you, Lily Armstrong." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, the same stars that had shone down on them that first night in the cabin, when 2 strangers had begun the journey to becoming one. Around them, their family's legacy sprawled across the land, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren carrying on the life they had built together. The ranch prospered. The school Emma ran continued to educate the community's children, and the Armstrong name was synonymous with hard work, integrity, and enduring love. As the moon rose over the mountains, Lily leaned her head on Thaddeus's shoulder, just as she had done countless times over the decades. His arm came around her automatically, holding her close, and she felt the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. This was home. Not the house they had built, though it was comfortable and filled with memories. Not the land they owned, though it was beautiful and productive. Home was this man beside her, the one who had pulled her from the snow and shown her what it meant to truly live, to truly love. The blizzard that should have killed her had instead given her life. Real life, abundant life, a life full of love and purpose and joy. She had left Boston a broken woman, fleeing scandal and heartbreak. She had arrived in Wyoming a stranger in a strange land. But that blizzard had changed everything, had brought her to Thaddeus's door and into his arms, and in doing so, had brought her home. As they sat together under the stars, Lily silently thanked the storm that had raged so many years ago, the wind and snow that had driven her to seek shelter, the man who had opened his door to a dying stranger and given her not just his cabin, but his heart. That blizzard had been cruel and unforgiving, had killed good people and brought suffering. But it had also brought her to this moment, this life, this love, and that, Lily thought as she felt Thaddeus press a kiss to the top of her head, made all the struggle and fear and pain worthwhile. She had woken in his cabin and found her forever home, and she had never looked back, never regretted, never wished for anything different. This was where she belonged, where she had always belonged, even before she knew such a place existed. The wind picked up, bringing with it the scent of sage and distant rain. Thaddeus stirred, ready to suggest they head inside before the weather turned, but Lily held his hand tighter, keeping him in place. "Just a few more minutes," she said softly. "I want to remember this." "Remember what?" "This moment, us together at peace, our family thriving, our lives full. I want to hold this in my heart forever." Thaddeus understood. At their age, every moment became more precious, every sunset more beautiful, every touch more meaningful. They had been blessed with long lives and good health, but they both knew that time was finite, that their years together, however many remained, were numbered. "I will remember too," he promised. "Though honestly, Lily, every moment with you is worth remembering. From that first day in the blizzard to this very second, it has all been worth remembering. Even when I burned the bread so badly it was like eating charcoal," he laughed. "Even then. Even when you tried to milk the cow and she kicked over the bucket. Even when you accidentally let all the chickens out and we spent 3 hours chasing them down." "I was learning," Lily protested, but she was smiling. City girl trying to be a ranch wife. It was bound to have some mishaps. "You became the best ranch wife anyone could ask for," Thaddeus said seriously. "You worked harder than most men I know, raised 3 incredible children, taught generations of students, and still found time to love me through it all. You are remarkable, Lily Armstrong. The most remarkable woman I have ever known. You are not so bad yourself, Cowboy." They sat a while longer, then finally made their way inside as the first drops of rain began to fall. In their bedroom, they prepared for sleep with the ease of long practice, moving around each other in perfect synchronization. When they lay down together, Thaddeus pulled Lily into his arms, her back against his chest, his arm around her waist. "Good night, my love," he whispered into her hair. "Good night, my heart," she whispered back. They fell asleep like that, as they had fallen asleep thousands of times before, wrapped in each other's arms and in the love that had sustained them through decades of life. Outside, the rain fell gently on the ranch they had built together, nourishing the land that had become their home, feeding the grass that would feed the cattle that supported their family. In the years that followed, they continued to live their quiet, happy life. They celebrated 50 years of marriage in 1937, surrounded by children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and even a few great-great-grandchildren. The celebration was held at the ranch, with people coming from all over Wyoming to honor the couple whose love story had become legendary in the area. Lily wore a new blue dress for the occasion, the same color as the one she had worn to marry Thaddeus all those decades ago. Thaddeus wore a suit that Will had insisted on buying him, though he grumbled about it being too fancy. They renewed their vows in front of everyone, their voices steady despite their age, their eyes locked on each other just as they had been that cold January day 50 years before, when Reverend Collins, now ancient himself, pronounced them still husband and wife. The crowd erupted in applause. Thaddeus kissed Lily, and she kissed him back, and for a moment they were young again, newly married, standing at the threshold of a life they could not yet imagine. 50 years, Lily marveled later as they sat in chairs of honor while their family celebrated around them. "Can you believe it?" "Feels like 50 days, Thaddeus said, "or 50 minutes. Time is funny that way when you are happy. It passes in the blink of an eye." "I do not want it to pass any faster," Lily said, a tremor in her voice. "I want to stay here like this with you forever." "We will," Thaddeus assured her. "Maybe not in this world, but in the next. I believe that with everything in me. You are mine, Lily, in this life and the next and all the ones after that. Death cannot change what we have. Promise, promise." They had a few more good years after that. Years of watching their family grow and prosper, of sitting on their porch in the evenings and reminiscing about the life they had shared. They were healthy for their age, still sharp in mind if slower in body, still devoted to each other. Then, in the winter of 1940, Thaddeus caught a cold that settled in his chest and would not clear. Despite the doctor's best efforts, it turned to pneumonia. He fought it as hard as he had fought everything in his life, but some battles cannot be won. On a snowy morning in February, with Lily holding his hand and their children gathered around, Thaddeus Armstrong took his last breath. "I will find you," he whispered to Lily with his last bit of strength. "In whatever comes next, I will find you, just like I found you in the blizzard." "I will be waiting," Lily whispered back, tears streaming down her face. "I will always be waiting for you." He smiled, squeezed her hand one last time, and was gone. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch in a spot he had chosen years before. The service was attended by what felt like half of Wyoming, all the people whose lives he had touched, all the friends he had made, all the family he had helped create. Lily stood dry-eyed through it all, holding herself together through sheer force of will, knowing that if she started crying she might never stop. After the funeral, as people offered their condolences and shared their memories, Lily stood by the grave, staring at the fresh-turned earth. She felt hollow, empty, like part of her soul had been ripped away. 53 years. They had 53 years together, which was more than most people ever got, but it was not enough. It would never be enough. "Come home, Mama," Will said gently, putting his arm around her shoulders. "You should not be out in this cold." "He saved me from the cold once," Lily said distantly. "Did I ever tell you about that? About the blizzard?" "Many times, Mama. He pulled me from the snow, brought me into his cabin, gave me his bed and his warmth and his love. He saved my life, your father. In every way a person can be saved. He loved you very much, and I loved him, still do, will always love him." She let Will lead her away from the grave, back toward the house that suddenly felt too big, too empty. "How do I live without him, Will? How do I wake up every morning knowing he is not there?" "The same way you lived with him," Will said quietly. "One day at a time, with courage and grace. That is what he would want. That is what he would tell you to do." Lily knew he was right, but knowing and doing were two different things. The weeks after Thaddeus's death were the hardest of her life, harder even than losing her parents, harder than any of the struggles she had faced on the ranch. She went through the motions of living, eating because her children insisted, sleeping because her body demanded it, but inside, she felt dead. Then one morning, about a month after Thaddeus had passed, Lily woke to find snow falling outside her window. Not the gentle flurries of a typical Wyoming winter, but heavy, thick snow driven by howling wind. A blizzard. She got out of bed and walked to the window, pressing her hand against the cold glass. The world outside was white and wild, just as it had been 55 years ago when she had stumbled through the storm to Thaddeus's door. She closed her eyes and let the memories wash over her. The cold, the fear, the desperate hope. Then warmth, safety, his face looking down at her. His voice calling her back from the edge of death. His love that had saved her in every way that mattered. And suddenly, Lily understood. She was still here because her story was not finished yet. Thaddeus had saved her all those years ago, had given her a life full of love and purpose. That life was not over just because he was gone. She still had children and grandchildren who needed her. She still had memories to share and wisdom to impart. She still had days to live and love to give. Thaddeus would not want her to give up, to let grief consume her. He would want her to keep going, to honor their life together by living fully until her own time came. And when it did, he would be waiting for her, just as he had promised. He would find her in whatever came next, just as he had found her in the blizzard. The thought gave her strength. Lily straightened her shoulders, wiped her eyes, and turned from the window. She got dressed, braided her white hair, and went downstairs to where Emma was preparing breakfast, worried about her mother who had been fading since the funeral. "Good morning, Mama," Emma said cautiously. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Lily said and meant it. "I am feeling better. Let me help with that." She took the mixing bowl from Emma's hands and began stirring batter for pancakes, her movements sure and practiced. Emma watched her mother with hope in her eyes. "Are you sure?" "You do not have to. I want to," Lily said firmly. "Your father would not want me moping around feeling sorry for myself. He would want me living right up until the moment I cannot anymore. So that is what I am going to do." And she did. Lily Armstrong lived for 6 more years after her husband's death, years she filled with family and purpose. She told stories about Thaddeus to anyone who would listen, keeping his memory alive. She attended every family gathering, held every new baby, attended every wedding and funeral. She was grandmother and great-grandmother and great-great-grandmother to a clan that stretched across Wyoming and beyond. She spent time at Emma's school, reading to the children and sharing tales of the Old West they had never known. She helped Will with ranch decisions, her mind still sharp and her instincts still sound. She taught Daniel's wife Grace how to can vegetables and preserve meat, passing down the skills she had learned over a lifetime. In the spring of 1946, as World War II ended and the world began to heal, Lily felt a change in herself. She was tired, bone-deep tired in a way that sleep did not cure. She knew what it meant. Her time was coming and she was ready. She made her farewells to her children, telling each of them how much she loved them, how proud she was of the people they had become. She held her grandchildren and great-grandchildren one last time, pressing kisses to their foreheads and whispering blessings. She put her affairs in order with the help of her lawyer, making sure everything was distributed fairly. Then, on a warm May morning, Lily lay down in the bed she had shared with Thaddeus for so many years and closed her eyes. Will sat with her, holding her hand, and Emma read softly from Lily's favorite book of poetry. Daniel stood at the foot of the bed, his own eyes wet with tears. "Do not cry," Lily whispered. "I am going to see your father. He has been waiting for me and I am ready to go to him." "We love you, Mama," Will said, his voice breaking. "I love you too, all of you. You have been the greatest joy of my life." She smiled, her eyes focusing on something they could not see. "Except for him. He was my first joy and my last, and now I get to have him again." Her breathing slowed, became shallow. Her children held her hands and told her they loved her, and as the sun rose higher in the sky, Lily Armstrong took her last breath. Her face was peaceful, almost smiling, as though she could see something wonderful just beyond their sight. They buried her next to Thaddeus on the hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The service was even larger than his had been, with people coming from all over to pay their respects to a woman who had touched countless lives through her teaching and her kindness. On the shared headstone, Will had them carve a simple epitaph: Thaddeus Armstrong, 1857–1940, Lily Rose Armstrong, 1863–1946. He found her in a blizzard. She found her home in his heart, together forever. Years later, their great-great-grandchildren would visit that grave and ask about the people buried there. And their parents would tell them the story of the blizzard, the cowboy, the cabin, and the love that had built a legacy spanning generations. They would tell of courage and determination, of two people who found each other against impossible odds and built a life together that outlasted their own mortality. The ranch still stood, though it had changed hands within the family several times. The school Emma had run was now a community center, but a plaque on the wall honored Lily Rose Armstrong, founder and first teacher. The cabin where Lily and Thaddeus had first fallen in love had been preserved, maintained by the family as a memorial to where it all began. And on winter nights, when the wind howled and snow fell thick, people in that part of Wyoming would sometimes tell the story of the schoolteacher who walked through a blizzard and found not just shelter, but a forever love. They would speak of Thaddeus Armstrong, the cowboy who opened his door to a dying stranger and found his soulmate. They would talk about the life they built together, the family they created, the love that endured beyond death. It became a legend, that story, passed down through generations. Young couples would visit the cabin and make wishes for love as enduring as Lily and Thaddeus had shared. Newlyweds would have their pictures taken by the grave on the hill, hoping some of that legendary devotion would bless their own marriages. But to those who had known them, it was not a legend. It was simply the truth of two people who found each other, loved each other, and built something beautiful that lasted long after they were gone. It was the story of a cowboy and his lady, of a blizzard that brought them together, of a cabin that became a home, and of a love that truly was forever. And somewhere beyond the veil of this world, in whatever comes after, Thaddeus and Lily walked together again. His arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest, the same as they had been in life. They had found each other again, just as he had promised, just as she had known they would. Because some loves are too strong for even death to break. Some bonds, once forged, last for eternity. And some homes are not places but people, not walls and roofs but hearts and souls intertwined. Lily Rose had woken in that cabin 55 years ago and found her forever home. Not in the building itself, but in the man who had saved her. And that home, that love, that belonging had lasted until her final breath and beyond. The blizzard had tried to kill her, but instead it had given her life. Real, abundant, beautiful life. And for that she would be eternally grateful. The end.